And welcome to Brain Balance Live. I'm so excited to see you guys this week. I missed you last week, Heather.
I missed you too.
Oh my gosh. We're here though. We're back for our usual awesome session where Heather gives each of us tools to kind of just help navigate this crazy life that is parenting, or even if you're dealing with some struggles of your own. Heather is a brilliant therapist, cognitive specialist. She has been the National Autism Summit speaker. And of course, she is major in the programming of the Brain Balance Centers. So how are you today, Heather?
Doing well. I'm admiring your pretty nails.
Listen, this was a treat yourself moment, you know?
Well deserved, yes.
Thank you.
No, I got outside this weekend for a minute and enjoyed the spring weather. Everything's good. It's so
beautiful. It has been beautiful here as well. Yeah, just the best of days here in Florida. What are we going to be chatting about today, Heather?
We are talking about how to handle children's and teens' anger. So I think this is a relatable topic for a whole bunch of people. And of course, the principles we're talking about here will apply to adult anger as well.
Yeah.
So I think we can go ahead and get started on the first slide, because so many times well-intended approaches end up escalating things further. And so if you see this teen here who's having a big emotional moment, and mom and dad, I mean, these are just samples of things that he might be hearing. Stop doing that at your age. We did an entire unintentional shaming show about when we say things like big girls don't cry, or boys, or anything gender or age related, or all the shoulda, woulda, coulda statements. Those unintentionally shame our kids. How many people listening grew up in a house where we don't do anger in this house? Sometimes that is overtly stated. Sometimes it is implied that that is not an acceptable emotion. And that could apply to a lot of distressing emotions. And we must allow and be present for all emotions, the comfortable ones, the uncomfortable ones, or else kids start thinking that their identity is tied to the distressing emotion. And even negative character labeling. I know you hear me talk about this so many times in different contexts. You are unreasonable. There is such a difference between calling someone a liar or talking about the action that was a lie. You lied to me is not the same as calling somebody a liar. You are unreasonable. He's feeling what he's feeling. So just anything where we are, our words are focused on the person and their identity, as opposed to being the commentator about something that is happening and focusing on what happened and what can we do to make it better, is not going to be as effective. So go to your room until you can control yourself. Now, a lot of times we do need settling time, but there is a lot of research that when kids are sent to timeout or separated from the family, the parent, whatever, in a moment when nobody's safety is in danger, where they feel they learn from that often that, oh, if I'm unhappy with someone, I isolate myself from them. And they can really take that in ways that are not intended. And, silent treatment, passive aggression, or you withhold from people when you don't get your way. And that is not the message we're trying to get across there. You are making me so mad. Not just with kids, but with anyone. Kids can never feel that they are responsible for our emotions. That is way too big a burden to bear. But that would apply to coworkers, spouses, friends. We must teach kids that we are all responsible for our own emotions and what we do with them. All emotions are valid. They serve a purpose. I am feeling frustrated right now, and I want to take a moment, and then we can work on how do we figure this out together.
I actually had this happen the other day where I was getting escalated, and, I needed a break. And sometimes they need a break too, because you can see that they're escalated. How do you word it? I just told him I was getting frustrated. I said, I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting angry. I feel like I might say something that I don't mean to say.
Yeah.
So
And see,
I'm
you're
going to take
using
a
I
break.
statements. Yeah. That's exactly what I was just saying. You want to use I statements. And that does not mean you're focused on yourself. That means you're teaching boundaries when you do that.
Yeah.
Like, I am responsible for my emotions. You cannot make me feel something that you cannot make me feel anything. I feel what I feel. You feel what you feel. They are both valid. What you did was perfect. I am feeling frustrated and I want to be able to talk. I just need time to settle so that we can then kind of re-engage and have a productive conversation.
Yeah.
You know, and so parents need settling time just like kids do, but there's a difference between that and putting a child in time out where you are not allowed, that comes across as you are not allowed to be around me right now because I don't approve of what you're doing. But as opposed to, we both care about what we say to one another, we love one another, and the best way for us to be able to talk respectfully is to take a few minutes, and then when we're ready, we'll come back. I love you, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I statements are fantastic. We can never, ever tell kids or anyone, you are making me angry, because they are not responsible for our emotions.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. You want your kids to share their big emotions, their true selves with you. If they feel that they can only talk to you about the things that are going to please you, you're going to lose out on being there for them and training them on things that really matter.
Yeah.
That is so important. When they know that you love and accept them, you see them. I've said before that a lot of times we think the absolute most important words we can say to our kids are, I love you. And I don't know how anybody could argue with that, because how important is that?
Yeah.
But it is also important for us to say and demonstrate, I see you. And we'll be talking about that more. But keep in mind, if you want to have some say in instructing and training your kids in the way you want them to go, best way to do that is for them to know that you not just love them, you like them, you accept them, you are open to anything that they want to share with you, and they are going to open up to you so much more, and it's so much better for their mental health as well.
Love that.
Yeah, let's move on. So let's talk about what are some of the sources, the root causes of anger. One is psychological reactance. That is a tendency in most of us. It is just a psychological phenomenon where I don't want to do this simply because you told me to do it. And we can do that even to ourselves. Like if we're self-talk, man, I need to go work out. No, I don't want to do that. Don't tell me what to do. It's subconscious, but we actually, the people on the two different shoulders,
Yeah,
we can
exactly.
actually resist it because we want to feel that it was a choice and not like we should or have to, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, have to. And so what's really good here is, but you are free to yourself and with others. With homework with kids, it could be, time to get started on homework, but you are free to start on math instead of English if you'd like. You need to work out, but you are free to go for a bike ride instead of going to spin class today. When you feel that you're not as controlled, whether it is yourself or another person, there's more buy-in. Another thing that's really good for psychological reactance is to pair a dreaded activity with a preferred task. So if someone wants to get healthier, but the process, you're not one of those people who just loves doing it, what are some audiobooks that you're really looking forward to that you could listen to while you're walking on the treadmill? Think about how you get to play the favorite music. What are some benefits? Focus on the benefits. Why is this important in the first place? When we think about why we're doing something before we think about the what of it, it's so much easier to get started. So you can apply this to yourself or your kids.
Oh, I love that. Love thinking about what, like the why. The why is so important. I forget that sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes kids get really angry, or we might even get angry with spouses or other adults in our lives. And it's a control thing. Now, in the vast majority of cases, when kids are seeking control, and often it's inappropriately, they don't know the correct ways to do it necessarily, it does not mean they are trying to take it away control from the parent, even though it can feel that way. They just need some of their own. And then when you think about kids with neurodevelopmental struggles who have more control, more difficulty adjusting their responses to sensory stimuli, or they're already struggling with emotional dysregulation, impulse control, that kind of thing, they may dig in and be seeking it in other ways, or they have certain parts of their brain that are very, I'm going to control what I want, when I want, how I want it, because I don't have an internal clock. I have time blindness. And so then I dig in my heels when it's time to transition to something else. So I think most people out there know the thing about give kids choices when you can. And I mean, it can be even things that just seem really innocuous, like which outfit, if they're still at an age where you pick out their outfits, you want to wear this or this. Snacks, they're both healthy, but they get to pick which one. Also, are you saying no to a lot of things as a knee-jerk response? Ask yourself, why am I saying no to this? And what are some more times where I can say yes? Also, look for opportunities where they get to flex their autonomy muscle. They need to grow their agency. I can do this. Praise their positive contributions. Let them know you're watching, even when they weren't doing it, to get a kudo. All of those things. We've talked before about creating independent problem solvers. The more they start having a voice in their lives, the less they seek it inappropriately. Lacking granularity, and this goes very much along with cognitive flexibility. So many of our kids only know the 8. If you think about crayons, they come in different boxes. You have the pack of 8, 64, 100 and something. Some kids only have the 8 crayon colors of emotions: mad, sad, scared, just the really big ones. And so if I feel mad, all that means in my brain is infuriated. If I'm sad, I'm devastated. If I am unsure, I am terrified or anxious. So what's very important is to provide at least 2 or 3 other words for similar emotions. Talk about the differences in them. Do this when you're reading books. How do you think this character felt? We don't tell them you're not feeling what you think you're feeling. But what we know with certainty is that when we grow emotions vocabulary, when kids start learning the range of emotions that's possible, not only do they learn to cope better, they actually start experiencing emotions more in keeping with what really happened. In other words, they only knew mad before, and that means a 10 on a 0 to 10 scale. So if you have kids all or nothing, black and white, switch, not a dial on their emotions. Give them layers. Talk about the differences in them. Talk about a time you kind of thought you were mad, but when you thought about it, you were just disappointed or frustrated. They start identifying, wait a second, that frustration thing we were talking about, that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the emotions start matching that, and then the behavior is going to follow. So if something on a scale of 0 to 10 happens, that's a 5. They're feeling it like a 5 and not a 10. How powerful is it that it's not just about teaching them to cope, but their actual experience starts having a broader range?
Yeah.
Super powerful.
Yes.
And just in general, working on flexibility, cognitive flexibility. What's another way of thinking about this? We did an entire flexibility show and gave tons of ideas for working on flexibility. Rejection sensitivity. We talk about this a lot, but it is so important, in which real or perceived rejection is debilitating. So if you have kids whose feelings get hurt very easily, no one likes me, or you try to give them instruction about a specific thing and they take it as an indictment on them as a human being, know that rejection sensitivity is real. 98 to 99% of adolescents and adults with ADHD or ADHD-ish types of symptoms have it. 30% say it's the most debilitating of all the struggles they face. So I'm not good enough. I do not have self-worth. This often is tied to body awareness. It is tied to executive dysfunction, emotional dysregulation. They may sometimes miss nonverbal cues that are given to them. Other times they may read in things that are not there. If what you're conveying to them is not overt happiness and approval. So beware of monotone speech. Beware of if you have kids with auditory processing struggles. That goes so far beyond what people often think of. That also means hearing the intonation and the fluctuations and not thinking that a monotone voice meant yelling. Think about the affect on your face. This is hard because sometimes we're serious. Sometimes we're fixing dinner while we're trying to talk with them. We're tired. They may take that as rejection. And so be aware of that and be thinking of what's causing that. Why do they struggle with that? That, yes, that can be true to a certain extent of any student, any human being. And we've done self-esteem shows. But if I don't have that sense of worthiness, rejection sensitivity sets in, and I may opt out. If I pretend like I let you know how much I care about this and I fall short, then I'm a failure because I'm a human doing, not a human being. I don't get that I have just inherent worthiness. I think I can be the best at this, so then you might see perfectionistic tendencies, and then being a poor sport if they're anything less than number one, or getting 100% on something. So the opting out, perfectionism is tied to rage, suicidal ideation by the teen years. This is very important to be aware of. Communication patterns, we're going to be talking about that. A lot of times it's what we're doing. We already looked at a couple of examples of that. We'll be talking about what do kids need to hear when they're angry, and questions to teach them to ask themselves, as well as questions to ask ourselves. But if your child struggles with dysregulation in general, there is a reason why. And you have to get to the root cause of that. When we think of executive functions, these higher level getting stuff done in life skills and dealing with the world effectively, one of the top skills from which all the others come is regulation. That means impulse control. That means self-regulation emotionally. 95% of our thoughts are automatic. It requires about 6 seconds for us to get away from that automatic thought so that it doesn't rule our behaviors into our logical brain, so that we're not reactive. We are proactive in logically addressing something and using problem solving. Get your kid, if you see an escalation going, teach them to body map, know what it feels like when they're about to escalate. If they have low body awareness, they're not going to be able to do this. But have them count backwards by 7, name state capitals, all of the foods they can think of that start with A, anything that gets their logical brain going and buys them time so they're not as reactive.
Yeah.
Social emotional books, you can teach so much through that because they're not emotionally charged when you're talking about an outside character. Impulse control games, Simon Says, red light, green light. There are just so many different ways. On my page, I'm always sharing kind of techniques to work on that. Okay, let's move on. So what do kids need to hear? We looked at some of the things they do not need to hear, but as far as these communication patterns, they need to not only hear these words, but experience it in interactions. I love you when you feel your worst, the same way I love you when you feel your best. And that's a little bit different from I love you no matter what. That doesn't have to be a bad statement, but sometimes that one is taken as I love you even though I really shouldn't because you're not worthy of it. I love you no matter what. I love you even though you're a pain in the neck sometimes. There can be things read into that. So I worded this very specifically. I love you when you feel your worst, and I love you when you feel your best. Your feelings do not change my love for you, and they also feel that in your behaviors. You're speaking your child's love language. Usually there are a couple of top ones that speak the most to them. I can see this is hard for you. That goes back to the not just I love you, but I see you. I recognize this. I'm paying attention. I am attuned. I am present. My head is not buried in the phone. I care about how you feel. Not I judge you for how you feel. I care about how you feel. How you feel matters. It is valid. All emotions are valid. It is what we do with them that matters. The emotion matters, and there's not a right or wrong in emotion. There is right and wrong in how we handle them. So if you have a child who kicks or hits their sibling, make sure everybody's safe. And if 2 parents are present, great. One is tending to the one who was hit. The other one is pulling aside. And before scolding, they're already heightened. I can see you're really mad right now. Tell me about that. And let them vent. Let them talk. Let them feel heard and seen and understood. And I'm so sorry. It can be hard when you don't get your way, or when you want to play with a toy and your sister had it instead. It is okay to be mad. It is not okay to hit. And
it's so hard to do that in the moment, Heather. Oh, to let them say what they need to say.
It is hard. And I know this, and this probably some people are watching, I think, yeah, this is pie in the sky. Yeah, right. You just hit my daughter. They are escalated, and the only thing they are going to respond to, you have a much stronger teachable moment. They have to know that they are just as valuable as human beings when they're mad. Empathize with that. Let them know that emotion's okay. It is serving a purpose, but it is never okay to hit your sister. And then you talk through what are some other ways that we could handle that anger. I'm here for you and will stay with you. I'm not being abandoned. There are some kids who really do have abandonment issues, especially, depending on a background, and there can be adoption at play. There can be that could be for a number of reasons. If you're talking about a teen and they feel that a friend abandoned them or a boyfriend or something, so be aware of that. There can be abandonment issues as well. But let me know when you're ready to talk. If they're ready to talk right then, great. But we don't force that. You're going to talk to me about this right now. Not if they're not ready. Remember, we've talked about amygdala hijack. When kids are feeling these heightened emotions, the amygdala, guard dog of the brain, hijacks the information. Sometimes they can't access the language centers of their brain, the regulation centers of the brain long enough to have a meaningful dialogue and to really absorb what you're saying to them. Okay? So, I know these things are hard. This is what works, and this is what kids need. And it does become much more natural, like breathing, once you kind of get used to flipping the script a bit,
Is there anything when they're like venting to you, because, and this is probably like a whole other show, but because of kind of the magical thinking or the way that my son's brain works, sometimes what he's saying when he's venting actually is not exactly what happened, or it kind of manipulated what you saw happen just for him to not feel like he's the bad person, which I understand. Like, do you just let them say what they need to say, whether it makes sense or not?
When they're venting, if emotions are heightened, it is first about getting them back to regulated. But then it is important. On one of our ADHD shows, we talked about magical thinking, and just for anybody watching, what she's referring to is there is a thing called magical thinking. It's a normal stage of development, even for kids who don't have neurodevelopmental struggles. But with ADHD, sometimes it can stick around, and it's like, if I want this to be true badly enough, maybe it will be.
Yeah.
I am not the one who slit that chair with a knife.
Yeah.
I really want that. Did you do your homework? Yes. I really wish I had. And so if I wish that hard enough, and that sounds so, but that is what magical thinking is. It is real.
Yeah.
And it leads to some dishonesty. There's, as well as when kids are in fight or flight mode. That's why it's called the fight, flight, freeze, or fib response. Sometimes kids will lie. This was so hard for me as a mom, and I had to remind myself of why this was happening. I am not raising kids to be liars. They are in self-preservation mode.
Yeah.
Sometimes kids who have slower processing will tell a lie because they're trying to buy themselves time to figure out how to navigate the situation. So it depends. If we're talking about anger right now, it's better to have that conversation later. But we don't just let magical thinking fly. You can say, I know you wish that were true. And I can see why you wish that were true. But it is important to face the reality. Kids are like, it doesn't matter if I go 80 miles an hour at 2 a.m. when I'm coming home. I'm not going to get pulled over. And I know you wish that were true. Cops are on the street at 2 a.m. and you are still putting other people in danger. It is very important for us to face that, but not if we're talking about in the midst of rage.
Not when they're in that place where they're really not rational at the moment.
Yeah, because it's just not going to penetrate. But then, yes, we do need to teach them to kind of face the reality when their brains are ready and their emotions are ready to be able to do so. Okay. That's a great question. All right, let's move on. This is valuable for so many reasons, to know that anger is the tip of passion. Individuals do not get angry unless something they care about is needing to change, or they feel that it is being threatened. You can learn valuable information about your kids when you start noting what are the patterns of their anger or rage episodes. And I know a lot of times it looks like there aren't patterns, but if you start logging them, thinking about all of this, the surrounding circumstances, I mean, also play in with, have they been sleeping? What are they eating? How frenetic have the days been? But also, what was the situation in which it happened? And sometimes you might notice that, okay, they are jealous of their sibling. They think that this one is loved. That could be they don't feel as loved and supported as the other one, even though that's not the case in most instances, especially for people watching the show. But look for those patterns because it tells you. Sometimes kids are defending a friend and they might do it inappropriately, but wow, they care about how others are treated. They care about justice. They care about fairness. Now, a lot of kids don't know the difference between sameness and fairness. And then that's a conversation. That's a conversation to have. But it is it provides us energy, and we can use that energy for problem solving if we know this. But
so what I say when I say, well, life's not fair, I should probably not say that.
No. And that's a biggie. And I did an entire show that it's not fair and talked about that because I know that sounds great. And we're kind of giving our kids a dose of realism.
Yeah.
That is not going to accomplish what
Not
we
helpful.
want it to.
Not helpful.
But you can do a search under videos about it's not fair. I did an entire show about that and where that comes from and how to handle it instead. There are many, many different facets, the lack of perspective, the lack of flexibility, the lack of understanding between sameness and fairness. It's not fair. My sister got a new pair of shoes and I didn't. And well, they got a guitar for guitar lessons that the sister didn't get. There are needs. That is not the same, but it is fair. That's a great show to watch if any of y'all hear the whole fair thing a lot. But depending on the age of your kids, these are things you can be asking yourself about your kids depending upon their developmental level. There are things you can work through with them. What do you think you care about? And of course, if they're older, what do I value? What do you value that's being challenged? What do you feel is being threatened that you care about? So younger ones, you're probably going to need to be doing this, logging it, finding these patterns. Ones somewhere in the middle of development, maybe tweens or, early, mid, late elementary. What's something you really care about that you think caused you to get so angry? Other ways to think about it. What's triggering me? What underlies this? Something is underlying the anger. What can I learn? I can learn that I care about my friends being treated fairly, and also that there are helpful and unhelpful ways to navigate that. It's probably not the best that I punch the person who, kick dirt on the person who said XYZ to my friend. But do I feel unseen or unsupported? I think kids may not come up with this one. This is a great one for adults also. This can be very much the reason kids are doing this. Fear of abandonment. I don't feel understood. I'm told how I should feel and what I should do. And based on my age, this and that, and all of that, some of the shaming stuff, but they may not be able to get there on their own. But think about that. Is that a possibility? Is that underneath the anger with a spouse, with an important adult relationship? That's important. Is your voice not being valued? That kind of thing. And how will I use this to fuel motivation and problem solving? What is without it feeling overwhelmed to kids, what is one small step I can take today to do something about this thing that I've just discovered I'm really passionate about? So developmental level depends on how much you need to be involved in this process or not, but definitely teaching kids to ask these questions, or this kind of gives you a framework as you're looking for the patterns in them. Okay, let's move on. Isn't it great, though, that even anger tells you things your kids care about that they may not even know they care about, or that you may not have realized?
Yeah.
And so now here are reflections for parents when we're thinking about our communication style. We want to talk with our kids, not at them. We must listen not until we understand, but until they feel understood. I've seen this one happen a lot with spouses as well, where, one spouse went, yeah, I heard you. And they can even recite verbatim what you said. Does that mean they understand what you were saying, or that they just memorize the words? Those are not the
We have
same
this all
thing.
the time in my house when there is an apology and I say, I know you apologize, but I do not think you know why you are apologizing.
Right. It's really important for the other person to feel understood. And sometimes maybe the way the person worded it, they really do understand, but they used words that didn't quite resonate. We got to be patient with that. It's so important to ask ourselves, think about with our kids, am I addressing the maladaptive beliefs more than their behaviors? Kids often have, we've talked about different ruts of thinking that kids can often form, particularly if they have neurodevelopmental struggles or if they've been through trauma. Or this can happen with any of us to one degree or another. Catastrophizing, all or nothing thinking, mind reading. For example, if my child is in mind, I already know that person doesn't like me. I already know that they're going to have a negative response to this. So I'm just going to peace out on this. I'm not even going to look for those patterns of thinking. And we want to address those, because if you address the thinking patterns that are unhealthy are what lead to certain emotions and behaviors that are out of whack with what really happened. So think about the underlying beliefs. Everybody's out to get me. It's not fair. No, whatever. You love so-and-so more than me. This is the worst thing ever. I can't do it. Whatever those underlying beliefs are that are leading to the anger, we don't want to deal with the symptom on the surface. We want to deal with the root cause of what's going on. And that can also be, many of those things can form because of neurodevelopmental struggles, with or without that. What thought patterns are underlying these emotions and then the inappropriate behaviors that are following with that? Do I provide feedback rather than criticism? And consider intention, effort, and progress. Criticism is just show everything they did wrong. You yelled and then you knocked this over and then you did that, and that is not acceptable in this house. That is criticism, and it's invalidating. You know what? I noticed that you snapped at your sister, but then you stopped. It didn't last nearly as long, and then you went over, rubbed her back, and whatever. Look for progress. Did they realize how what they said came across? That has to do with the intention. They have to know that they're accepted right now and that you are paying attention and you notice the efforts they are making toward improvement, because it is not going to go from knockdown, drag out, rage fits to kumbaya like this. Look for progress. And another thing about feedback is that often it is sandwiched between two positives. This isn't I see that after you kicked that over, you went and picked it up and made sure everything was okay. Now, the way you talked to your sister wasn't okay, but then I noticed that after that, I'm so proud of how you went and did. We want to teach our kids relationship repair. The thing that they still need to work on, but it was sandwiched between two positives. You're noting progress, but it also is not just negative. That's key. That is feedback versus criticism. Do I ask questions instead of telling them how to handle situations? And of course, this depends on neurodevelopment. So if they're little, we can talk about, let's think of what are some things we can do to make this better, and brainstorm, and you can get the ball rolling. What's something you could do for your brother? Can you think of anything? So prompt on the level necessary. And of course, as they get older, and we're talking about developmental age, not chronological age, the more they can fill in these gaps and come up with the answers themselves, the better. If it's some altercation they had with some peers at school, okay, what are some ideas you have to make this better? Because as long as we are their executive function for them, they are going to feel more controlled. They are not growing in their social emotional capacities, their agency. I can do this. That is required for motivation and hope in life. And the more independent they are, the more they're going to grow in responsibility, the more you're setting them up for being responsible citizens, good friends, and family members. Do I remain calm? I know we talk about this one a lot. It is just like with our kids. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Even if you are very good at managing your emotions and you don't blow up your kids, and if that's not the case, you're a human being, welcome to the club. So this is not a shaming session. Give yourself settling time. You are allowed that. But know that even when you are trying very hard to do all the right things, your pupils dilate when you're mad, when you're heightened, when you are stressed about something happening. And kids can pick up on a different look in your eyes that you can't control. It's a visceral response. It's not fair. That happens because it's part of the fight or flight, and it helps us see better. It's improving some physical abilities to slay the tiger in the fight or flight response. But just be aware that there can be visceral things. You can be over trying to keep your voice calm, but it's still shaking, and they know you might be clenching your fists even though you're not yelling. Be aware of those things and give yourself grace and give yourself time. Just you deserve settling time, and you have every right to be frustrated. Focus on nurturing intrinsic motivation for desired behavior. Yes, kids sometimes should do things because we tell them to, because I said so. That is also shaming. We're saying your voice doesn't matter. The fact that you care about why this is important doesn't matter. You're trying to understand the world. Too bad for you. That's not what we're trying to do there. We when they ask those questions, let's answer them. What's in it for them? But as we're growing kids' self-awareness, we are growing their agency, their independent problem solving. When we help them connect the dots, how do you see that this is going to benefit you? By doing this, you're showing me more responsibility, which means then you get to borrow the car. It can start with those things, but then it just starts becoming more and more internalized.
Yeah.
Are we telling them what to do? Or are we helping them see why what we're talking about matters? Connected to values.
I had a moment this morning where we were getting ready for school. And once my son comes downstairs, I really try hard for him to not go back up the stairs for any reason. Because if he goes up there and I lose track of him, he can get distracted. And then we're late to suddenly he's in his underwear again. And I'm like, how did this happen? And so he was going upstairs to get his jacket. He forgot his jacket. And I said, all right, I'm giving you 30 seconds. He goes, Mom, you don't need to count for me. And I was like, 10 when I got to 10, and he was like, Mom, stop. I know what I'm doing. And I was like, 20. And he was starting to get mad because I was counting. He didn't like that I was counting, but my, history with him has shown me that if I don't stay engaged with him, I lose him and then we're late. And so I was getting frustrated too. And I was kind of asserting my dominance by continuing to count, even though he asked me to stop. And then I calmed myself down after that. I left him alone. I actually let him do his whole morning routine by himself because I was still so mad. And then right before he went to school, I said, when you ask me not to count, what could I do instead that you would feel better about, where I could continue to help you get ready, but you felt like you were in control of it? And he was like, I think you just need to tell me to come down.
So yeah, that's such a sweet story. But you could be thinking of some things and say, here's some I kind of brainstormed about this since he wasn't really able to come up with specifics. Which one do you think we should try tomorrow?
Yeah.
And then that's a choice. That's giving him some autonomy, but then you still know that you have to have your hand in that.
Yeah.
That's such a good story. You're like, go, Mama.
I was getting so irritated. I was like, I will count. I said I was going to count, and I'm going to count.
Right. But yeah, so prioritize check-ins and quality time. I mean, I know this seems obvious, but we live in a busy world. And when we are having regular conversations all the time, showing interest in our kids, asking open-ended but also pointed questions. Tell me something really funny that happened today. What was your favorite part? Ask them open-ended but pointed questions, not just how was your day, because that's overwhelming. But when we do that on the regular and we show interest in their strengths and their hobbies, and we have that connection when it comes to the tough stuff, it does not feel out of left field that you're engaging in these conversations. You already have such a comfort level with them and a trust that they can tell you the real deal. Some things are going to be hard to hear, but they know that you're there for them and going to help them work through it, much more than shutting you out if they're not used to those like daily check-ins and quality time and speaking their love language. All right, I want to show you one more thing before we kind of wrap up here on the next slide. And we talked about emotional granularity earlier. And as we're helping fill in the gaps and helping them understand the difference between terrified and uncertain and anxious and frustrated, disappointed, mad, infuriated, sad, devastated, as we start layering this in, some of what's anger and that's coming out as just absolute rage might really be frustration. So grow this word in them. It's so important. And you can teach them about the tolerance cup. This is nice. And you can even use a real cup to do so. This is nice though, because emotions are abstract. And this makes it a little bit more concrete. But get a cup out and do the water thing as you're talking about this. But you can say draining, tiring, taxing experiences, depending on the level of who you're talking to. Add water to our tolerance cup. This is our frustration tolerance, how much we can take. But when something frustrated happens, and you can be like, when I forget to bring my lunch to school, or my teacher scolds me, and you name things true to their life, and just put some water in the cup. As it fills, by midday, it's really starting to get fuller and fuller because we might be frustrated. We didn't do well on that test, and then our friend wasn't very nice to us. It's emotions will start building. We might start feeling irritable. We're just kind of on edge. Whatever words are going to resonate with your kids. Man, by the time we get home in the evening, that from work or school, that cup is full because we've had a lot of frustrating things happen all day. And one tiny thing can cause it to spill and make a mess. Your sister won't let you come in her room, and and then you can have the water. When that happens, big emotions come out to empty the cup. And you can talk specifically about ways they may show it. Stomping around, yelling, kicking, screaming, whatever it looks like to them. Big crying come out. And that's good in a way, because when we do that, it empties the cup. But there are good ways and unhealthy ways to do this. Unhealthy ways, what do you think some of the unhealthy ways are? And talk about some of the maladaptive things they're doing that might be physical aggression or yelling or, whatever the things are, and defiant behaviors. Let's think of ways to empty the cup so it won't spill and make a mess, and talk about the healthy ways. Maybe we do deep breaths. We do some jumping jacks. We get outside and fresh air, tell a joke, whatever those things are. Come up with a list that resonates with your kids, and you are creating really a nice mental picture that helps make much more literal and concrete a concept that can be quite abstract for them to understand.
Yeah, I really love this metaphor. This is really cool.
Yeah. All right. That's it. So much anger is actually frustration, but kids don't know the difference, so it comes out as anger.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all those amazing tools. You guys, if this is your first time watching, or even if you come here every week, even if you're watching this on the replay, Heather is very engaged with her audience. And any questions you have, you can write them in the comments. We will definitely get to them. And sometimes they even give us ideas of future shows. So please, 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 if you have questions, ask us, even if you're not comfortable doing it here. DM them to at The Hidden Turn, as you can see there. Heather always tries her best to help. Is there anything else you want to add for this week?
I don't think so, except that Thursday at 1:00, Dr. Brian and I will be back, and we are talking about language development, speech and language development. So there's the sensory motor aspect of that, as well as the language skills that underlie communication and literacy. We are talking about why those matter, things to look for, and all that kind of thing. It's going to be a good one.
Love that. As you can see, you've got the brain balance centers near you with the phone numbers there. Make sure you take those down. If you're on the fence about getting an assessment for yourself or for your child, I cannot recommend this program enough. As a parent from Brain Balance, and also an individual who actually is helped by these talks for myself as well, because I do think I deal with some neurodiversity myself. So undiagnosed neurodiversity over here. So thank you, Heather. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks for everyone for watching. Have a great week. Bye.